we briefly examined the relationship between energy and matter. We found that it takes an immense amount of energy to create even a tiny amount of matter. And conversely, just a tiny amount of mass converts to an immense amount of energy. And this principle is the crux of our whole energy existence, because we happen to exist as matter, not energy. Because we live in the matter world, we are surrounded by locked-up energy all around us in various forms. Food is the first form of locked energy that we seek daily to keep our own energy system, our life, alive. Eating is the most fundamental and basic form of energy transfer for us and most animals. After food, fire became the easiest access to additional energy, which gave us comfort and security. After that, coal became the next significant energy source easily available for our use and exploitation. The story of nuclear fission for energy, however, is complex and spans 100 years. The story of fission needs historical context, and the history of fission is a complex story. After watching this video, you will have a deeper understanding, and the word fission will also carry a very different meaning. The term fission and nuclear are used interchangeably to mean the same thing. Fission energy and nuclear energy are just alternate terms for the same thing. Also, nuclear power plants and nuclear reactors are also just different terms for the same thing. Let us firstly establish that fission is serious. It is not like gunpowder that kids play with, or for sparklers or fireworks. It is not like coal that can be carved into ornaments or burned for a really pretty bright flame. It is not a bonfire that is easily made and enjoyed, and nor is fission available to anyone. Fission is in the hands only of governments, who commission fission plants by companies that buy refined uranium. Fission is dangerous, controversial, expensive and political. Fission is a long-term proposition, because once a government goes nuclear, there's no turning back in a hurry, regardless of how anyone feels. Fission is what many feel as tinkering with something we were never meant to tinker with. Fission is serious. The first experiments toward nuclear splitting happened over decades, involving various scientists, universities, and in different countries. Splitting the atom, or to be precise, disrupting the nucleus of an atom, just wasn't possible in the early 1900s, and honestly, no one knew how to do it. The race to split the nucleus involved many great scientists who took part in the process over decades, sharing their knowledge and results by publishing a paper. The history of nuclear fission spanned 50 years before it actually happened in 1938. And before anyone asks, no, Albert Einstein had no part in splitting the atom. So, when was the atom first actually split? Ironically, it took place in Germany a year before World War II by German physicists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann. It is a compound irony that the country that achieved fission also started the World War a year later. The compounding of the irony is that the country's leader, Hitler, lacked the funds to build fission because he needed every dollar to attack the world conventionally. So where was America in the fission race? Before we can answer that, let's step back in time for a moment. In the 1920s, the challenge to achieve nuclear fission represented the holy grail of achievements by many physicists and chemists. In their world, nothing could top the splitting of the atom. Nuclear fission required many fields of expertise, but particularly chemistry and physics. Even with the sharing of fission experiments and ideas from the academia of many universities since 1900, no one had devised a way of starting the elusive fission reaction. However, the critical deep knowledge and innovation needed to trigger nuclear fission had emerged from a relatively small academic German community, specifically chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, and physicists Lise Meitner and her nephew Otto Frisch. Lise Meitner and Otto Frisch together initially provided the theoretical explanation for chemists Hahn and Strassmann's observations, which was published, perhaps unwisely, in early 1939. News of this deep knowledge, with implications for nuclear weapons, immediately reverberated around academic Europe. It would have been a frightening proposal to the world, the very thought and the first concept even of a weapon of mass destruction. For citizens, it would represented what it was, something evil and dark. Realizing the enormous implications, America immediately began a nuclear program culminating in their 1942 Manhattan Project, a military project to specifically achieve nuclear fission to make an offensive nuclear bomb. Certifying fission and building a nuclear bomb with 1942 technology involved the largest single undertaking in human history, requiring a vast number of scientists, engineers and technicians, all offering their souls to achieve this technological feat. Amazingly, with America's undistracted wealth, it took 27 months to achieve not only fission, but a capable offensive nuclear bomb, ready for deployment in July 1945. But that atomic bomb would only sit still for a month, because in August 1945, in the middle of World War II, America had sound reason to deploy their new atomic bomb on Japan, which had determined to take over Asian dominance and had significantly attacked many countries. In August 1945, America dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and then on Nagasaki. There is an argument that America didn't need to drop those bombs. However, Japanese command was refusing to surrender or negotiate, and had already established a history of lethal defiance, even in the face of a losing slide. At the time, there was no guarantee that America could have won a conventional war against Japan, and because of Japan's resolute stance of defiance, a long and protracted war could have ensued at terrible human cost. Historically, America has been vindicated for dropping the first offensive atomic bomb. However, that action was within the context that Japan had already attacked half the world, including Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, the Philippines, Guam, Wake Island, Malaya, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Burma, New Guinea and Australia. Ironically, if America had not dropped the atomic bomb, it may have been blamed for an aftermath of not ending the war when it could have. After the Second World War, attention turned to electricity, because there was a big need of it to rebuild many cities amid shortage of coal and resources. America, Canada and Britain turned to nuclear fission as a possible answer for cheaper energy. However, nuclear fission for electricity was a whole new concept than for a bomb, because a bomb only has to explode. But to develop a plant that would maintain stable fission reaction was a whole new level of complexity. In 1950, the first few nuclear reactor generators were launched into operation. The first meltdown happened in Ontario, Canada, 1952. There were other reactor accidents over the decade. Along with these accidents and the worry of an accident, it became clear that fission, the energy wonder, also carried serious implications. The sense of danger for everyone within a 50-mile radius of a reactor meltdown had become a known reality, and it could happen to anyone at any time in the day or the night. While the long-term danger of nuclear waste was kept locked up for a time, it eventually leaked, and no one was happy about having to store nuclear waste. Against a growing grassroots opposition to fission reactor plants in the 1970s, hundreds of nuclear reactors were nonetheless commissioned across the United States. Fission power is not demonstrably cheaper than coal grid power. Nuclear is centralized power, meaning that if the reactor breaks, there is no power to thousands of homes. Another major problem with a nuclear power plant is the economic topology and supply taper for the target population. Nuclear power stations cannot undersupply power, so they must oversupply. Customers must pick up the tab for this oversupply. Uranium isn't cheap. As we can see, fission is an expensive proposition, and not just monetarily. Fission is not for low populations, nor for a single high-population city. For example, non-nuclear developed nations such as New Guinea and New Zealand would actually lose from going nuclear power. Australia is a non-nuclear country that is in the unique situation of being the perfect landmass, sun irradiance, and population for solar rooftop panels. As of 2025, there is a proposal by an Australian political party to introduce Australia to 7 nuclear power plants, to bring 7 nuclear power stations to the country, which would clearly be the worst possible choice for Australia. Second to Australian solar irradiance levels is the African continent, which has only 1 nuclear power plant near Cape Town. Even though African nations are predominantly under solar panels, half of them are seriously considering nuclear power. Why any world leader would want to bring nuclear power to Australia or Africa beggars belief. So to conclude, let's take a look at the pros and cons of fission energy. For the pros, nuclear energy is actually a huge advantage in cold climates like Russia, China, Northern America, Mongolia, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and Canada. These countries have long, cold winters where power usage is very high and honestly necessary. This really gives a big support for fission energy. Now, for the cons, nuclear energy is not renewable, and since we now have cheap solar panels, nuclear energy is actually a pretty bad option for warm countries like Australia, New Guinea, Africa, and South America. Nuclear fission carries a whole host of problems. It's a one-way decision. Expensive, dangerous, centralized, and it leaves a terrible legacy and cost in radioactive waste for future generations to maintain. Plus, uranium will run out within 100 years. What then? One thing's for sure. We won't have any more uranium for medical use. The Thrime team really hope you've greatly enjoyed discovering fission and its history. Please like to tell Google you like this content or subscribe to tell us you like this content. And we'll see you in the final part 4 of this series where we look at photon energy. Have a good one.